as you know, I've been attending the trial of Sean Diddy Combs for about 3 weeks now. We had the first week where the jury selection took place, and then we had the first week of the trial, which was very exciting. And we just wrapped up the second week. I must tell you, I have a treat for everyone today. I have a very exciting person, a legal analyst that I know you're going to enjoy just as much as I do. Her name is Candace Kelley, and we're going to welcome her to the show. Welcome aboard,
Hello.
Candace.
Why, thank you. Good to be here. Like I see you in the lines outside of the courthouse. Much different here. It's nice. It's nice and warm inside.
Yeah, right. It's been very cold out there, at least for the last few days.
Yeah, yeah.
So, so we've been attending the trial. Tell us a little bit about you before we get into the meat of it.
Oh, sure. I have been doing legal commentating for about 5 years now, but I also teach the law at Rowan University. I teach media law, so a whole lot of invasion of
Wow.
privacy or defamation rights, things of that nature. And I also act as a legal expert on various defamation cases. So I've been mixing the law for a long time. After I graduated from law school, I got the TV bug and I've worked at Court TV and a bunch of different stations as a reporter. New York One, UPN, I was a writer for. BET, I covered the Sean Combs trial in 2001, gavel to gavel. So I am out here. I am out here talking about the law. It's a nice place to be, and it's good to have an eye on justice. And that's why, courtrooms are open to the public. And I would just invite anyone to come down at any time, not even just for this case, to see how our legal system is doing.
Yes, indeed. Let's start off with the first week with the jury selection. What was your overall view of that week, considering all the people that they had to boil down to, basically 45, and then they boiled it down to, I believe, 18, 12, plus the additional six?
Yeah, the thing that sticks out to me is just one, how many people had experienced some type of sexual violence or sexual assault. Number two, just this sense that you're going to be on here for 6 weeks, and they're not fully sequestered, meaning they can go home after each night, go home to their families, and have to come back. They take notes during the day. They give those notes back to the judge and the court, and then they come back. But what struck me was just the amount of time that they would have to take, and especially during the summer. And I can understand why. You remember that one time, and it was a Friday, and he was going to wait to select the jurors to that Monday, but he said, "No, I'm not going to do that because I do not want to lose any jurors over the weekend for when our actual trial begins." So what stuck out to me, besides the race and the age of all of those people, was just the commitment that it takes to be a juror. And I could see how somebody might say, "Yeah, I'm not sure I want to be on this case," because it is quite a commitment, but an interesting makeup of the jury for sure.
I noticed in the first week, the day that you're referring to, that Friday when the judge mentioned, they said the previous night someone had sent an email saying that they could not be on the case. Does that happen a lot in these legal cases?
Well, it does. I mean, it happens enough where, listen, somebody might find out somebody gets sick, has gotten sick in their family, or maybe they have a job change, or maybe they get sick themselves, or maybe they just feel like mentally they can't really adapt to the schedule, the content. Because let's be real, Mel, the content of this, right? We knew where it was going to be, but it is a lot, and you may not want to take that in every single day. It might be triggering, so it does happen. And when it does happen, it's not that unusual. You want a juror who's fully there, and based upon the questionnaire, as well as your jury consultants, which both sides have jury consultants kind of narrowing down and reading people's dispositions, reading the juror questionnaires, which is what they fill out beforehand. And you're trying to figure out who is this person really? It is not unusual because you really want someone to be 100% attentive. And if you can't do that, I'm the prosecutor. I don't want you anyway.
Right. You know what I was shocked about? I was shocked that the judge recognized one of the juror candidates.
Oh, right. He worked with him.
Right. I
Yeah,
wonder if
that
that's very common.
it can be very common. These are blind juries. They pick them through voting registrations. I think they use the DMV sometimes with people who are part of the state system in New York. It happens. It's like a big world and a small world. And he chuckled. It was like, well, of course he's off. What they worked like 10 years ago on something together. But yeah, it's highly likely. Listen, I remember growing up. So my mom is a teacher, and she called to jury duty. It would always be a former student. So I mean, it just happens. and that will knock off somebody off the jury. You can't be really impartial, as they say, when you graded their English paper. It's tough.
Yeah, because I know also they said that there was a guy. I remember him speaking up, and he said that he had went to school, same school as Diddy,
That's right. That's right.
and I believe he was struck as well, right?
He was struck as well. I can't remember the reasoning, but I would say that just because somebody went to school, I'd have to hear. I don't remember all of his details, but if someone went to the school with the person, I don't know. Look, we know high school leaves some deep impressions, Mel. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe they struck him because of that reason. I can't recall. If somebody went to high school with you, Mel, would you want them on your jury?
I guess it depends on who it was.
Exactly. It depends on what you did that day.
Right, where they know
Yeah.
me from.
Right.
So here's the other thing. One of the candidates for the jury, basically, he worked for the UN under international terrorism, and I noticed the defense wanted him out of there. Why do you think they were scared of him?
I think that particular juror probably knew a lot about what it meant to terrorize people and will probably automatically see some of these things that Sean allegedly did as terroristic. I mean, I was telling somebody, they were like, well, how would you describe it? I said, really, some of the stuff he did, if it's true, was diabolical. Like on the level of, are you kidding me? Is that what he did allegedly? Again, allegedly, I think that someone in that frame of mind would naturally think, this guy's a threat. This guy has performed terroristic acts. Okay, I know we'll get to Kid Cudi, but it's kind of the equivalent in that same vein. That's what I would say.
Okay, very good. And one final question in regards to the jury selection. I noticed that Monday morning, right before they started the trial, they brought up how the defense brought up how there were 9 black men and they struck 7, leaving only 2. The defense was very concerned about that, but ultimately they lost. I guess I don't know the legal jargon. You're a legal analyst. You can explain it. But
yeah,
what is your thoughts on that? Is that a big deal?
that is a huge deal. As we know, even if you look in the justice system today, depending upon who you are as a defendant, whether you're white or black, and who sits on the jury, they said that even one black person on a jury will help determine a lesser penalty for a black defendant. So just one. So you really have to have not only a jury that represents the community that you're in, but you have to have a jury that when somebody strikes someone, it has to be a race neutral striking. You can't just strike black people. You can't just strike women. You can't just strike white men. Now, if that seems to be a pattern, then whoever is striking this group of people, this protected class of people, they have to justify why it's other than race that they got rid of them. Batson v. Kentucky is the case that this type of reasoning is based upon. Anybody can go look it up, but that's where we get this principle that you have to be race neutral when you strike a juror from the potential juror pool. So I could see the concern. Listen, I'm a prosecutor. I need a black man on that jury for a lot of reasons. I need a black man that's probably 30 to 70 even. All right. The 30-year-old might recognize him, but that 60 to 70-year-old, I know that they know some lyrics to Sean's songs, and they're also perhaps wise. They also could be a potential, someone to lead the group during deliberations. So yeah, that's where the race comes in. And I'm a prosecutor. I'm sorry, I'm a defendant's attorney. I need a black man on that jury.
Oh, wow. Amazing. I know I said final question, but I have one more.
Oh,
I
sure.
noticed that a lot of the women that they had selected to review for the jury selection, one lady in particular, she says, I saw the video, he's guilty. And the judge like, okay, you're out of here, basically. But then a lot of them, the judge was trying to determine if they could be unbiased. So what effect do you think this video really had on these people?
Yeah, well, I think that you look at the video plus the apology, right? Then you get the effect that he did this. And then you have to wonder, what is the reasoning behind it? Now, whether it's a good reason or a bad reason, that's a terrible video. So I could see how many people could say what he did was ridiculous. It's unacceptable. But when you are looking for a juror, you're looking for an impartial juror. That's the word that they use in the court of law. Someone who may have heard facts of the case potentially, but can wipe off everything and have a clean slate and just take the evidence that they see. Meaning, let's say that we never saw this video. Somehow it wasn't introduced into evidence, which we knew it would be. But let's say it wasn't. But they'd have to block that video that Sean apologized for. They'd have to block it out of their minds. Difficult. And the judge also doesn't want to give people an open right and door to just say, oh yeah, I saw it, he's guilty, which is why he's going to question them and ask them, because a lot of people want to get off and off this. And if they know that that's an MO to get off, that's why the judge asks questions and kind of breaks it down, because he really wanted those 45 people. So that's the work that judges do in order to show a person, hey, you can be impartial and understand what we want. Not that you haven't seen anything, but you can start at a clean slate.
Powerful. So let's get into the case. He's being charged with, number one, I believe, from hearing it in court so much, racketeering. How can you have racketeering for one person?
See, now this is a good question. Even when we think about racketeering and R. Kelly, it was different. There were other people. But racketeering against Sean Combs alone means that everybody else has made some type of deal. And that's why Sean Combs is a standalone. I also think that just how it's perceived that he is this one person and no one else, it really kind of puts the weight on his shoulder that he is the mastermind, not necessarily sharing it with anybody else on paper, legally. And just visually, I think that makes him seem like this big character and this mastermind. And I think that the prosecution did that for a reason. Listen, he's got over 60 civil cases that are against him. They've spent the last year combing through those people, those plaintiffs, seeing who might be a good plaintiff. And if you're in a situation where you're up against Sean Combs, you do want to make sure that you're protected for your safety, because that's what people have said. And also that you have immunity, that, since he was doing a lot of illegal things, if you were there, you might consider to be a part of it. So they made deals, and that's why it's Sean Combs by himself.
Oh, I was wondering about that. I think number two was sex trafficking with fraud, force, and coercion. Could you give us a little insight into that?
Yeah, so that would be really what is central to the case right now. Sex trafficking, fraud, force, or coercion, meaning that you have used fraud or force or coercion in order to make somebody take part in these illegal sexual acts. Now, this coercion could come in many different ways. For example, we've seen physical coercion on the tapes, but you also might coerce somebody because you have within your control something that is kind of pivotal or central to their lives, like their livelihood. You may pay for the rent, pay for their food, pay for their car, and you coerce them into doing something because you have this major hold on them. In some cases, it might be fraud, where you're doing something that's illegal or fraudulent in order to have somebody a part of this sex trafficking situation. But really, in this particular case, we're looking at the force, we're looking at the coercion, and that's really what's questioned and going to be answered by the jury when they deliberate. Was Cassie coerced?
Okay. I know it's the first day of trial. They played the video maybe 4 times repeatedly, and they showed him dragging her back to the room. Now, in court, as you know, it was revealed that was an actual freak off, that she was attempting to leave early. So do you think the video establishes force, or it's possible that the defense has struck that down?
Right. So what the defense is saying was, no, they were fighting over a phone. She thought he was cheating, and therefore they got in an argument, and it was a tug of war over this phone that really kind of got out of hand, like any bad relationship might be, but without the cameras, right? But here we have the cameras. I think a couple of things. One, there was witness testimony and evidence that there was somebody that was in the room. So as you said, allegedly she was leaving a freak off and actually trying to get away so quickly that she didn't even put on her shoes. I thought that was very important. It wasn't like she, putting on her shoes. She quickly was getting out of there, and that was apparent. I thought it was interesting, Mal, that they really obviously they wanted the video to be shown at the pace which it happened, because the video that we've been seeing over a year has been really fast. And the defense said,
right,
hey, that's making Sean Combs look extra big, and that's making it seem like he's really kicking her. I mean, the fact that they played it at its pace, I think it made things a little bit worse, quite frankly. But I understand what they were saying. They need to show it sequentially. It was out of order, what we've been seeing provided by CNN. But either way, fast or slow, not good evidence. So I don't think that the defense has much to say there. And look, he already apologized. He apologized for it. I don't think that that's made it in yet, though, right? I don't think, like, if you're a juror and start with a clean slate, do we know that I think we know that he apologized, right? In court.
Yeah, for the most, I don't think it's been stressed as much as we would believe. I do know that he has owned the abuse and the domestic violence, but
exactly,
I haven't seen the official apology.
Yeah. I don't think they've played that. Yeah. So, but either way, any person would see that and say it was against her will. This is what I would say.
Okay, so let's get into the first day of the trial. Witness number one, he was a sex worker, and he explained how the whole transaction came to be. Now, he was originally hired to be a dancer, I believe, for a birthday party, and Cassie was supposed to give him $200, I believe, or Diddy. He was hired for $200, but he ended up receiving, I believe, close to 3,000 or 4,000 is what he said he would average. Mm-hmm. So does that get into sex trafficking, or is that just like prostitution, or maybe nothing at all?
It could be both, but it's definitely crossing state lines. in order to engage in prostitution because you have that money involved. Because you know what? I don't know if you've been getting this mail, but people have been saying to me, oh, wait a minute, does that mean if I bring somebody across state lines and we have to have sex, I'm sex trafficking? No, I mean, this guy was hired from an ad, right? And then after the act of sex, he got paid. You know, that's very different than someone saying, hey, I'll go to Las Vegas and I'll pay your way and you two happen to have sex. You're not trafficking. And plus, you know, we're talking about patterns. We're talking about more than once, but that does get into the crossing the state lines for the purpose of prostitution. Great first witness. I mean, especially with the timing that they were dealing with, right? Cassie, as pregnant as she was, they had to get her there a little earlier, probably than they wanted. But he was a great first witness to set up. Oh, okay, we're jumping into it, right? We're not soft landing. We've got a man who's saying that he was an escort. We're starting off with the sex. I think that this whole thing is just playing out like a movie, quite frankly.
Yes. There was something that troubled me about his testimony. Well, toward the end, I believe it went into the next day.
Yes.
And so the judge said the agents would help him get home and come back the next day. Why would there be agents doing that? Does that mean he's under authority somehow, or he's on?
Yeah. You mean just in terms of him going to and from the courthouse?
Right. Is that normal?
Yeah. It is normal. And very much a safety thing, because when you are leaving, number one, you want to protect the witness from any type of interference. Number two, you want to protect the witness from any type of safety concern. And you know, you just want to make sure that that person feels comfortable enough and that they come back the next day, right? They don't want missing people. We already have one missing person. Victim number 3 apparently is not showing up. So you have an agent protecting someone to go home, which when you're talking about this type of case, it's really important to make everybody feel very comfortable and very, very safe.
Okay, so thank you for that. Witness number 2 was a security guard who is now police officer, I think Officer Flores, that responded to the video. What's that? Israel? Israel Flores, right? Okay, so my question about him, did you think he was a solid witness?
I think that he was a solid witness. I do. I think that he was a very solid witness. I don't think he had really anything to gain or lose from this, which made him a good witness. He was information and gave us a different perspective from when he walked off that elevator, because we hadn't seen that before. So him getting involved and hearing, because here's what he did. Cassie was leaving, right? And then when he came, she didn't want to press any charges. She was scared enough to leave, was fighting him, was being beat. Remember, he sat down, he broke the vase, all of that. But then she was so scared, she didn't want to press any charges. Feels like she knew, like, okay, these are implications, ramifications of all this. I don't want to be a part of that. And I thought that was very good. It wasn't a point that he had anything to do with. It's just that through him, we were able to see that she was like, never mind, I'll go back. I don't want to get anybody in trouble, because I will get in trouble and no, it will land on me. That's how I took it as. I'll just go back to the room and I won't press charges. And there you have it. So he was important, a real dot connector.
Okay. One thing that stood out about his testimony is that he was the one who took a cell phone video of the original video. And I think that's the one they have on record. And maybe the original, there's some issues or it disappeared, what have you. But the question is, he said that he had recorded on his cell phone so that he could take it back and show his wife. Does that damage his testimony and the case overall?
No, I don't think it does. I think what it does do is that his responsibility as a security guard at the time, because now he's a police officer, he wasn't using due diligence to carry out his responsibilities as a security guard. He was worried about showing video to his wife, which is a responsibility and a job that he wasn't doing to the max, right? He was worried about his self-interest. Remember, though, he says that when he went back in the room, he got roughed up by Sean Combs a little bit, and he thought that he was recording that video. And I think that just shows, again, what type of person Sean Combs might be, that he's always just willing to fight, always just willing to hit someone, and uses that as a solution to a lot of problems. But for me, I don't think he was doing his job. And maybe that had something to do with why Cassie got monies from that hotel.
Okay. One of the big parts of this case is bribery. And I noticed in his testimony, he said, I believe that Sean had offered him $100,000, I believe, in a brown paper bag. And I believe the defense argued that, hey, in the picture, what is Sean wearing? He only has a towel around him. So do you think they established bribery based on what he was saying?
I don't think that was as strong for me. But the fact that, because he did get paid something. I don't think we saw it on there. But that certainly checks the bribery box. So I think the argument could be made. Did the defense say something about, or he was paying for what he did to the room at one point. I don't know. That's ringing a bell for me, but I need to look at my notes. But it could be explained away in different things. Though Israel said, I thought it was a bribery. But then again, that's all perception. That's all bias. That's all recollection. So you have a lot of things in play here. But I don't think it broke the case in any way. It just let us know kind of what he was like in a kind of a fight or flight situation, and he chose to fight and fight with money.
Okay, very good. When it comes to these cases, is witness testimony strong enough to present a solid fact, or it really needs more or collective amount of information? Like, does what he said about bribery, does that make a solid point?
Yeah. Well, yes and no. So remember, when you have the witness that is on a stand and giving their direct testimony, prosecution is on your side. You've rehearsed this. It is the goal of the defendants and the defense attorneys to break apart and impeach the witness to make them look like a liar. And you do that by challenging them on their memory, challenging them on their bias, challenging them on maybe the type of person that they are. Because let's face it, Israel took that money, right? So you have to challenge them on who they are as a character. So I think that witnesses, it's on a case-by-case basis. I think that his particular evidence that he presented, because whenever you testify, that testimony becomes evidence. So that evidence was solid enough to move me to the next point to understand, okay, that was his role in it. Again, didn't kind of sway me one way or the other.
Okay, let's get into Cassie. Do you think the way she walked into the courtroom, being roughly 7 or 8 months pregnant, I would surmise that would have a big effect on the jury seeing her at this stage in pregnancy?
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why the defense said, we do not want her walking in. They made a request that she already be seated when the jurors came in. That request was not met on that first day, and she was able to walk in. Because here's the way I look at it. How far do we go in limiting somebody because we think it's going to prejudice the jury one way or another because of how they look? I mean, what if she was also disabled or with a cane? Like, how far do we, stop people from just being who they are? If the jury has sympathy for someone because they have a cane or because they're pregnant or because, they're blind, so be it. And that's who they are. That's who she is. And she's not trying to hide it. And guess what? She couldn't hide it. She couldn't hide it when she was on there. There was no way. But I think that whenever you are in a courtroom, whether you are not saying anything or whether you are saying something, you're always testifying anyway. So her sitting there touching her stomach quietly between questions, that spoke a lot of words. Sean Combs, reading a Bible, or his glasses and all gray. He really is testifying in a way. He's saying something. So I think that everybody, just based upon who they are, when they sit, and he's very attentive and he whispers over to the judge and he passes notes, all of that is kind of quietly testifying too, because you're sharing with the jury that you're interested in the case or that you look astute or, those types of things. So having, stopping her walk in would have been completely unfair. That is who she is. Let her be.
Right. Cassie is so soft-spoken. Did she come across as a credible witness to you?
Absolutely. She was so credible. You know what made her seem so credible is that her truths made her look terrible, right? Even after all of this, and when I say terrible, I mean her truths. She didn't try to make herself look like, oh my goodness, I just, I didn't want this. No, I sent these text messages that said, I want a freak off. That's me. I said, I love him. That's me. She even said, I still love him. Like, for the times that we had, that's me. All of her truths were so to the point, you thought to yourself, she can't be lying. I mean, because she doesn't look great. She's a drug addict, or was, and went to recovery, cheating perhaps, right? So all these things, it just seems like she just sat down and told the truth, even if it made her look bad. And then that made it seem more truthful that she didn't come out looking like an angel. Did you get the sense that the jury was like, yeah, okay? Or do you think that they were not feeling her?
I think they were feeling her on the first day when the prosecutors were giving her the direct, but I think she ran into trouble with the cross-examination, especially when she was talking about the story of what happened at Mel's Diner, and they brought up how the prosecutors, she had testified differently. Mm-hmm. That stood out to me. And also, as far as the wooden hanger, when Diddy hit her friend on the head with it, she testified. And then under cross, they pointed out that in her previous testimony, she said she didn't see it, but perhaps heard it. So that's when I started to see the jury members look like, okay, this may not be as true as what we had imagined.
Right.
But getting back to her, I noticed that when they played the video, when they talked about all the disgusting things that happened, and even the very uncomfortable things that you would imagine with all the explicit text messages that she had put out and they were reading.
Hmm.
And in fact, her husband was sitting there right under the screen as they're presenting these different facts or what have you. I just wondered, why would all of these things, you know, cause her not to cry, but then she cried when she was talking about Diddy and their relationship. That's the only time I saw her get emotional.
Yeah, she probably, what happens a lot with women who are victims of domestic violence or in situations that they do not like, they can clearly detach and disassociate. As she was in the middle of these sex acts that she says she did not want to be a part of, she probably wasn't even there. She had drugs, okay, and just disassociation from these things that would trigger her, separating her from, they say these people have, when something traumatic happens, they have an out of body experience where they're looking at it happening just so they can get through it. Plus, she has seen these videos. She might be simply more immune than other people, like the audience or like the people in the gallery. But she cried. What time you mentioned she cried? At what part did you say?
Only when she was speaking about Diddy and her love and relationship. It seemed like when she had to reminisce about being with
Yes,
Diddy, that's when she got emotional.
yes. That's when I think she was back into her reality minded, grounded self. Like, she just wanted a relationship with this man that was normal. I loved him. I wanted to do things I'm doing now. Have a family, have a husband. But he just wouldn't. I think that's when she got into her not disassociated self. And she was that woman who wanted to be in love. And therein lies the difference. That was kind of what she wanted and what she was asking for. What we see is kind of the trajectory of a relationship that we all go through when we meet someone, but hers just had more extremes in it. You meet someone, right, Mel? You fall in love. It's all good. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll pick you up. I'll drive to the airport. I'll do this. I'll do that. Now, she had different thresholds, which maybe you or I wouldn't have, but they were her thresholds. But then I think it got to a point where she realized, wait a minute, it's got these videos of me now. Now they're trapped. Oh, goodness. What do I do? That's becoming something that I don't want to do. How do I get out? And what he said to her, I think in no uncertain terms through his actions, is you're not getting out. That's how I could perceive it. Now, listen, we've got a few more weeks to go, but that's how I see it right now on this particular Friday.
Okay. What do you think about the incident, as far as we'll use the word rape, that she
Yes.
accused Diddy of, and how the defense tied that to a time actually perhaps when she was having consensual after let's say they broke down how in August she said that she was raped after they had a mutual time together for some closure. They came back to the apartment.
That's
Diddy
right.
raped her. Then a month later, roughly, they had consensual, right?
Hmm.
And then her husband was trying to call her, and she was shutting him off. And the defense was like, so is this the time when you're trying to tell your husband that he raped you?
Right.
How do you
Right.
think that this affect the jury or just the overall case?
Listen, what we saw, or what I think I saw, again, this is just in terms of relationships, and we can all pull from our experience, is someone who was she's been trying to find love for a long time. That's what I get. Like, just think about any of your male friends, your girlfriends who are just looking for love. They want to find it, they want to make it happen. She was still, and this is what happens often when you have these power relationships where you still want to please that person. Like, I remember watching this documentary, and there was this girl, her father molested her whole life, but she still was looking for his acceptance because it was her dad, and sometimes women who are in a situation where there's this very off power dynamic, which I think we can agree that there was. She did not have as much power as Sean Combs, but you still want their approval because the whole time, or most of the time that we're hearing about, something about it, he did show that he did not approve. He did not seem like he didn't like her. Like, there was no approval except when he was going back and showering her with gifts and an apology tour, which is what often happens with victims of domestic violence. So I think that you can be raped and then also come back and have sex with that person if you're still in that mindset where you are seeking the approval from this person. Again, she was on the stand saying, and I still love him for all the times that we had. That's incredible and sounds painfully honest. And I think that that's something that if I were a juror, I would consider.
Okay. Cassie had revealed that she received another 10 million from the hotel. How do you think that affected the case?
Oh, I think it's going to give jurors pause on one hand. It because she got 20 million, right, from Sean. Now she's getting 10 million from the hotel. It took me a moment to think about, okay, why did you, by the way, this was a month ago where things were settled. She hasn't gotten the money yet. My first thought was, oh, is that right? What was your cause of action? I'm still not sure what it was. I mean, maybe It wasn't necessarily a fiduciary responsibility, but I don't know. The hotel definitely did something wrong, and that we didn't see that tape, right? That it was buried. So it was probably something in there. I'm not sure. Maybe they caused her emotional distress. I don't know. But on the other hand, if she did get the money, well, then she's not here for any more. She's got 30 million. So she has nothing to lose. She's already gained what she's going to gain. In fact, she's in the best position for anybody who's suing Combs because he has money right now. Everything now isn't, I mean, he had money back then. Everything now is in, like a forfeiture status because of this RICO charge. He could lose it all because now everything, if this RICO charge sticks, becomes a part of what he has to give back. If it was a fruit of what he did inside of being the mastermind of this criminal activity. So I say that it helped her at the end of the day, but I had to go through, all right, wow, 10 million, what does that mean? And at the other end of it, I thought, well, she's got enough money now. It's not because she needs more money that she's here. She's got money. So why is she testifying? It made her seem a little more truthful and honest, I have to say. And I'm not saying this because, I'm on her side. I really, really waited, Mel, for it to go either way. But this week was a turning point for me. Did you feel like this week was, okay, there was one witness where you said, oh my goodness, this is it?
Yeah, I believe so. Definitely with Kid Cudi.
Yeah.
I think that was a turning point in the case. So here's a question I have for you.
Yeah.
Getting back to Cassie. If he gave her 20 million and had her sign an NDA, why would the legal ramifications still come?
Well, once you sign an NDA, that doesn't mean anything when you have the feds involved. The NDA disappears. You are allowed to disclose. You are subpoenaed, and you are not in violation of any legal contract that you have. Plus that NDA, and I need to look at it. I'm not sure what he was. I think part of some of those NDAs was, you won't go to the police. You can't put that in NDA. You can't say, hey, yeah, and you can't go to the police. And again, I'm not sure what it says, but this is just a point of information. If he said, listen, you can't go to the police for anything and file a complaint against me, well, you can't do that. If I raped you and I burglarized you and I tore up your car, the NDA, that you cannot have an NDA that's going to cover up something that's illegal. So, and then in a federal case, the NDA really becomes obsolete, displaced by the case itself. And the fact that we need her as a key witness, as the star witness, in order to move this RICO case.
Okay. They brought on Sean Diddy's executive assistant. How do you think he helped the case? It seems that he was able to reveal a lot of the behind the scenes things that were happening.
Yeah, I think it was. He was the one who, when he threw something at his girlfriend, again, this is all from memory, and then Sean said, go file a police report. But in that police report, don't make me look like I was the aggressor. That's the one, right?
Right.
Yeah. And then he went out, he drove around for an hour, didn't file the police report, and came back and he said the job is done. I felt like this was someone who really admired Sean Combs, but unfortunately was able to speak to, some acts of violence and saw some things that he just didn't like. When he sat down for his interview, he was told, hey, you see the picture on this wall? This is Sean Combs' world. Like everything functions inside of that. And I think that was key because that's how it seems like wherever he puts his tentacles in, that's what you better believe. And if not, he will show you. That's what I think the prosecutors are trying to do. Do I think it's true? I don't know. Part of me is like, wait, so you had this, Gavassier, you had Revolt TV, you had the clothing line, you had music, and your president. When did you have time to do all this crazy stuff like in the middle of this? But that is what the prosecution is going to say. Like, this was Sean's world. This was Sean's world. If you didn't do what Sean said, you got in trouble. So I think that he was good for that, to figure out what was going on in Sean's world and how you had to really be in order to function around him. Not just if you were his girlfriend, not just if you were the president of Bad Boy, but if you were his assistant. So he was good for that.
Right. The executive assistant, he described how Sean, I guess, had beat the chef, and they had asked him to basically distort the truth and say the chef attacked Sean. The prosecutors are framing that as obstruction. So can you speak on that? Do you think that that's obstruction of justice?
Oh, absolutely. Because what he was doing was he was getting in the middle of a legal matter and he was lying about it, which means that you are getting in the way of the truth of whoever is going to come behind after you file the complaint to figure out what happened. Now you're interfering with my work as a police officer to come in here and try to figure out what happened. You are obstructing it. You're stopping it with your lie. So while it sounds like a very low level offense, obstruction of justice is one of those prerequisite acts, if you will, that triggers a RICO charge. obstruction of justice or arson or sex trafficking. So that, and again, you just need one, and you may not think very big of it, but if that's what he did, then that is obstruction of justice. And that is what the prosecutors are going to try to sell. And I think probably will sell in closing.
Okay. So you're a legal analyst, and I know you looked at highly educated, by the way, and I appreciate having you on the show.
Sure,
I know
sure.
you
This is
look
fun.
good. I know you've looked at many, many cases. Do you think that the prosecutors are laying down a great case against Sean Diddy Combs right now?
I think they're laying down a case as good as R. Kelly's. And I say that because they're very similar, even in the wording that the Department of Justice put out their press release. I looked at them. I was like, oh, they look very similar, except for the children involved. But someone who used their means and all of that and their power in order to, get people to do things that they wanted. They're doing a pretty good job. We're living in the Me Too era still. It's not as heavy as it was or big as it was some years ago, but we're still there. We're still going to see Harvey Weinstein. We're still going to see perhaps more Sean Combs's. Someone pointed out to me that when it comes to the whole world of Me Too, hip hop has kind of been not left alone on purpose, but hasn't been prosecuted in the way that, maybe the movie industry has, or TV and film. Russell Simmons, went away. There are a lot of people I could list, but the bottom line is that he's the first to say, hey, you're going to be the one to represent hip hop in the Black community in this way. So I think that it's similar to other cases, and the Southern District of New York has a 95% guilty conviction rate. It's pretty similar, and honestly, it's up to the jury. But today, like I said, I'm feeling that the prosecution is doing a very good job.
They're painting this picture that Sean ran an organization, and they're coloring it as a criminal organization. So do you think that this case will set a precedent? Because most ball players, celebrities, they have a security. They have people
Sure.
at their disposal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that this could affect all of them going forward with these type of cases?
Well, listen, it is something that has been used a lot more. We saw it with Young Thug down in Georgia, one of the longest trials and cases in the history of Georgia. But people can use it. They just use it more sparingly. However, we see now, I think that this adds on to R. Kelly, and it adds on to, Young Thug. And I think that people are definitely more open to using it. Listen, you need a pattern of criminal activity. What does the pattern mean? It doesn't mean a pattern the way that we might think of, like, oh, he has a pattern of, visiting the library twice a week. He's done it for 10 years. Yeah, that's a pattern. For this RICO statute, a pattern means 2 times over the last 10 years, you have done one of these things. Obstruction of justice. There's a list of 35. So it's kind of a low threshold, but I do think it has a lot of people wondering and thinking about, all right, well, wait a minute. How do I need to do business? As I said, I've gotten questions from just, regular friends like, wait a minute, I'm not sex trafficking, am I? Because, you want to understand and have your eyes open to the law. So absolutely. I think that people who have businesses, which they normally are a business, if they are, a famous baseball player or whatever, yeah, they got to keep their eyes on what they have going on before they become some part of this thing that they didn't even know they were a part of.
Okay. One thing that troubles me about this case, it seems that a lot of the witnesses are falling apart under the cross-examination. For instance, Dawn Rashad, she told a very convincing stories, and I thought, wow, Diddy's a big monster, and they even called him that at the beginning of the trial. But I noticed that under cross-examination, they simply compared what she had previously said. I guess she didn't realize that could happen.
Yeah.
And it was falling. Each account fell apart, and they even showed that this part about, and you could be killed or you could end up dead, whatever the verbiage was.
Yes.
That she didn't mention that in the 8 interviews that she had.
Oh yeah. This is one that for me, once again, doesn't have any effect. Like I could not count her if I was in the jury. And that's not saying that what she was saying was not true. You can have had her say or believe that, I don't know, at some point he threatened her life and then forgotten about it. And you can have but when you understand, you have to be consistent. That's one of the things that on cross, attorneys will always get you for. Your memory, your inconsistency, your bias. They like to bring that out so that jurors can say, I can't believe her. She's biased. I can't believe her. At the end, they were trying to say, aren't you suing him for money? Right? They're trying to make it seem like it was a money grab. And then by the time it was done, like you said, at first you were like, wow. Then you were like, wow, for a different reason. Like, that didn't go too well. And Nicole Westmoreland, in her cross-examination, she jumped right to it. She had a different level of, let me just share with everybody, this girl's lying. It's like her disposition was like, she's lying. Let me get you. You're lying, right? And then she eventually got her to say, basically, yes, my story has changed. And I thought, all right, we can cross that witness off the list for her testimony. Though I do think some of her corroborating that Cassie said, I think that was very helpful. But overall, I'm like you. I was thought this is interesting. A lot of interesting evidence, on the side of Cassie. Then things fell apart, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about yesterday. The assistant, I thought he helped the case because he painted a picture that while at work, he covered a lot of things for Sean, but he made a point that when it was time for Sean to go to a hotel, I guess to start his freak offs or whatever he was doing, he painted a picture that he went home and Sean went on about his personal life. Do you think that helped the defense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it helped the defense. I think it helped the defense that he also showed that he really saw Sean as someone who was held within high esteem. What did he say? That he was a god? I think this is George Kaplan. Right?
Right.
This is someone who generally, I think, listen, he was overworked, absolutely. And he also set up some things in the room that goes again to that, hey, I have everybody under, like, I'm not just using my business as someone to carry out my music and my, other deals. I'm actually using my business associates and people who work for me to set up a room. That's the problem. To set up candles, to set up, and correct me if I'm wrong, because there's so many witnesses, but now you've got them doing things that aren't related to you being a music mogul. Now you're in the bedroom, and that's what the prosecution, that's what we really, as the prosecution, are going to hear in closing, that he's using people within his enterprise or within his just business, okay, and having them carry out things where illegal acts are involved.
Yeah, he said he was advancing the rooms. I believe that was the term he used to set him up. So getting to Kid Cudi, what do you think about the whole arson and the burglary? I felt like that this was devastating to the case.
I think it was too. That's why those lines were long. People were like, "Let me see Kid Cudi," right? But it was absolutely devastating. Granted, people I talked to. Okay, well, do we have Sean Combs on video doing it? Do we have the receipts? Do we have? Listen, if I'm a juror, how many times does somebody's car get blown up with a Molotov cocktail? To put oil in a bottle, and then put a rag in it, and then to light it up, and to throw it so that upon it hitting something, it basically detonates, if you will, and explodes. That does not happen in high-end suburbia a lot, or at all, unless you're involved in the mafia, or you're living in Russia or Ukraine. So the fact that there is no smoking gun, the fact that he said, "Listen, I'm going to blow up Kid Cudi's car," and I'm going to blow it up in front of his friends, and then it happened after the burglary, and then you've got kidnapping, in my estimation, because you took Cudi's assistant, took her to the home. And remember, burglary is once you've broken and entered, you don't have to steal anything. So even if you didn't take anything, it's still burglary. We know he rummaged through those gifts. The poor dog they were talking about lost his mind in the bathroom. So with all of that, it did not look good. What I think really spoke volumes, I've heard a lot of people talking about how, hey, Kid Cudi didn't even dress up. Guess what? He came there and said, "No pretenses. No pretenses. I'm just telling the truth." And that, I think the fact that he was, in the leather jacket and the jeans, that made it even seem more honest. Like, I'm not going to put on a suit for you, right? Like I know, what's the guy's name? The Punisher. I'm just going to come in as who I am. I'm going to tell my story, and I really want to go home. Seemed very, very honest and truthful based upon what I'd read in the transcripts.
Right. I noticed, like, in their pre-arguments or what have you, the defense did not want them bringing up the issue about the dog and how the dog was traumatized by being put in the bathroom by Diddy.
Yeah.
And the dog eventually died because they said that it could have a big impact on the jury because some of them could be dog lovers.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, no, I do think that is a very big thing. I mean, ultimately they allowed it in, right? To say that the dog was a little traumatized. The way that I see dogs in the mall and strollers, I believe the prejudice in that. Have you seen the dogs in the malls with strollers? Or I've been in the grocery store around food that's open, like the pre-cooked. Why am I looking at a dog? People love their dogs. I would have felt the same way, that we do not need to get into the dog and the state of mind of the dog, because people love their dogs. It's kind of like the same way they brought up how I think some of the pills that Sean had were in the shape of Obama. It's like, oh, that was brought up for folks who love Obama. They're probably like, no, that was very disrespectful. All these little things, you don't know what triggers people. Because I assure you, what was not on that questionnaire was, how do you feel about Obama, before getting on the jury? But now you're telling me he got these pills made in the shape of, you put faces on, I think, some of the pills. Obama disrespecting him. You never know the hot points of emotionally of a juror. So you do always want to be careful, especially with dogs. Oh my goodness.
Wow. I must say it's so nice having you on Watching the World. I really appreciate having you. I know you have to go on another show now, so we're going to check you out there. But a question for you.
Yes, indeed.
We have 2 weeks down. How do you feel now about the trial? Do you feel like the prosecutors are making way, or do you feel like the defense is holding them off? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that the prosecution is making way. I think that, that the defense, it really does matter who is doing the cross. They've got some, all of them are very, I got to tell you this. I really do like the disposition and the professionalism of the defense. I'm not saying I don't feel that about the prosecutors, but all of them, they're just a sharp bunch of people who obviously know their stuff, which is why they're hired. I think they're doing as good a job as they can without offending anybody. And I say that because they did not cross Regina Ventura, for example, Cassie's mother, because they knew better. I think that they've been making a lot of right decisions and that their court demeanor, it's a really just wonderful journey and a civic lesson on how the law system and legal system works. The judge too. So, but to answer your question, I think that they're great. I think the defense is doing a good job as they can with the facts that they have. And some of these are just bad facts. That video is just a bad fact. It's a bad piece of evidence that you can't really skirt. So they're doing the best that they can. And they are the ones who can probably do the job for Sean if he is to get off in any way, because they're good at what they do.
Now, the Southern District has like a 99% conviction rate. Do you think that's because people tend to settle and maybe Sean could be in the 1% because he has all the money? Or you think that the case is just so strong, it's very hard to overcome these?
So yeah, it's around 95, and it is because they have top-notch lawyers. They have a top-notch prosecution team that knows what they're doing. Plus, here's the truth: even though you can get indictments very, very easy, they say, "Hey, you can indict a rock." That's what we are all taught in law school. But the feds have already done their work. In other words, if you get stopped and there's drugs in your car, then the state makes their case. No, the feds do it the other way. They have already been searching. They've already, bugged phones, gotten warrants, what have you. They've already collected their information to make their case, and they're done. Now they're just asking a group of people, can we indict this person? And they've said yes. That means we're already pretty far along the journey. You've already just spoken to one group of people that said, hey, we can pull an indictment here. So I think that 95% guilty rate has to do with the talent of the attorneys and the fact that you do have a head start, because that's how the feds work, to do all this research and collect all this evidence before even moving on. And you feel pretty good, I would imagine, that they've gotten this far to even just bring up the charges. Somebody could have said on the other side, yay, the judge could have said, you're overcharging. Why are you doing this? Why are you overcharging? This man is just kinky in bed. This man just had a domestic argument. But that didn't happen. And I think that when you go through those loops, that certainly builds up a lot of credibility and a lot of, backbone in terms of who you are as an attorney to move on.
Okay, and one little brief question.
Yeah.
The fact that they did not let him out, does that really show us something about this case? He didn't make bail.
I just think that it shows that there was some evidence that was presented that he was tampering with some witnesses, allegedly, and therefore we can't let him out. And that how he functions in terms of this is Sean's world, and I'm going to move this and move that, have your mama at that. Not that they said this, but the type of man that can have your mother at the mortgage company, right, taking out a loan. He likes to manage things, and they saw some of that happen, and the judge said, I cannot let him out. Allegedly, he called some witnesses while he, was behind bars even. So I think it was important to keep him in, and I think that jurors probably felt safer too, as well as witnesses, right? Because if you're looking at something like a Kid Cudi, Sean didn't throw a Molotov cocktail. He just allegedly made it happen. So it's not that you're afraid of, oh, Diddy's going to come get me. It's kind of Diddy can be at his home in Miami. What is he telling other people to do? And I think that the judge felt that he saw evidence enough of that he could not let that slide. It makes for a safer, protective atmosphere where all the witnesses feel like they can come and speak without anything holding.
Thank you so much. This has been terrific having you on the channel. I really appreciate you. And I definitely would love to have you come back because you gave a lot of insight about this case. And it's great going to court with you every day.
Yeah.
in line, right? Waiting in line.
Yeah, yeah.
Dallas,
You've
waiting in
helped
the
some
rain.
places for me.
Yeah. I'm glad to help you get in the courtroom. That's my
Yeah,
pleasure.
look, I owe you some Krispy Kreme donuts or something because
No,
you
you've
get
done
that.
wonderful. Hey, listen, coming on the channel, you've done wonderful, and I would do it again. And I will continue to help you get into court. So
Okay.
thank you so much. I really appreciate you sincerely. I look forward to having you back, and enjoy your
Absolutely.
next show. I'll come check you out. You want to give a shout out? Tell them who you are.
Yes,
Where they
listen,
can
you can
find you.
absolutely. I'm at Candace Kelley TV on Instagram. And I also am just gonna launch my YouTube channel soon. I have a show where I interview people. It's called Power of Attorney. And we just talk about legal things. What I like to do is make sure that people know about the law so that they're not afraid of the law and can use the law in the way that other people sometimes naturally do so because they're brought up with it and they don't understand it. But the more you understand, the better you are at kind of speaking up for yourself and not being afraid of the system that you might have a perception about. You have to be a part of the conversation in order to properly have your place inside of the legal world. Yeah.
Wow, you inspire a lot of people. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Mel.
I'll see you next time.
All right.
Okay.